I would hear people question my judgment when I was drinking, like get in the car and drive. And they said, you think you ought to be driving? Oh yeah, no problem.
I was crashing cars and I was at the same bum job and, you know, owed restitution of my taxes and wasn't talking to my parents and was barely hanging on to my relationship.
I wanted to feel better, but I didn't want to stop getting high.
There's a problem in America today: opioids. We set out to make a movie about the opioid crisis, and in the process, we came across the underlying cause: addiction.
But we didn't learn about it in a textbook. We had 3 people tell us their stories.
My disease started very young, and it was probably always having real high expectations, disappointment. And what you realize about addicts and alcoholics is we call it the donut with a hole. There's all this great stuff out here, but what's missing is what we concentrate on.
Actually caught my second DUI before I got in long-term recovery. I tried to get sober a couple of times before then. It didn't really work out.
I had a weekend that was as wild and scary a weekend I've ever had in my life. It's part of my story I don't really talk about, but let's just say I was out in 3D and IMAX into an area that I felt like I was absolutely insane, gonna die. The world was coming to an end. It was hell, and it lasted for 24 hours. I woke up and said, I got to get out of this movie.
I started to like develop like survival instincts, I guess. Like, you know, I couldn't hold a job, so wasn't really good at hustling, so I started stealing things. And I would steal things from people who were closest to me because I knew that they wouldn't press charges against me. And so at first it was like real subtle things, like my parents would invite me over and I would go up and steal money out of my dad's wallet. And then, you know, I would wait for them to be gone and I would steal checkbooks. And then it got to the point where like I'd steal washers and dryers like right out of the house. And
I thank and make amends to my husband every day for sticking it out with me through that time, because that was some of my worst behavior, was kind of towards the end there, heading towards that bottom, right? And just to not show him the respect, the love, the appreciation, you know, alienation, manipulation, just the way I treated that really special person, the one person in your life that you're not supposed to treat that way. And, you know, I did.
I was living in an apartment with a roommate, and he was being prescribed medicine for like deteriorating discs, and I'm stealing all of his medicine, and they stopped making OxyContin at this point. So I'm drinking a lot and I'm taking whatever I can, but I mean, my life was just in shambles.
Scared of the world, scared to, you know, be independent, and so therefore I would just focus on me and, you know, placate myself into kind of disappearing. I was always an escape artist with my drinking and using. The MO was always to escape life's problems, escape life in general.
When you get to that point that you enjoy escaping, and the escaping involves changing your mood with alcohol and drugs, it leads down a dangerous road. The repetition leads to the addiction of where you become a slave to whatever your substance is. And it's just a terrible place to be, because what happens, you're having a great time when you're on it, then you have to wake up the next morning and you have this severe hangover. And you tell yourself it is not going to happen again. But it is unlike anything I've ever been through in my life. It just holds you and strangles you.
I remember, it wasn't like a specific time, but I remember when like my body started to crave it, and like I would start feeling like ill. Like the symptoms were like flu-like symptoms, like just my whole body ached, couldn't control my body's temperature, and I really wanted to like discount the fact that it was drugs or alcohol, but like there was no denying that that was it.
Where I knew that I was out of control is I went and had an appointment with an internist. They told me that my liver was in really bad shape, and they said, "Do you drink very much?" And I said, "No." Well, I lied. I have a couple. And I can remember telling doctors through the years, that's what I would say, I've had a couple.
I really didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't really care. If I ever did think about it, it would provoke fear, and then I would use to mask that fear.
I was working at Camping World. My boss hurt my feelings because she didn't give me a bonus that I felt like I deserved. So I showed her, and I locked myself in a hotel room and drank and took pills and basically just I don't even know what like my plan was. Like I was too afraid to kill myself, but like I didn't want, like I would pass out with the hopes that like when I wake up I'm like, fuck, like this again.
Sometimes, in telling their story, a person in recovery will say, "This is how it was. Something happened, and this is what it's like now."
So we asked them what it was like, and they told us. Now they're going to tell us what happened and what it's like now.
First thing I did is I went to a mental health professional to look for something that was going to make me feel better. And so then I started that process. But I ran into one therapist that kept saying to me, "I want to talk to you about alcoholism." And of course, I didn't want to talk about alcoholism.
I had hit my sort of proverbial bottom. And yeah, we had through the court system, there was counseling involved. It was sort of like an intensive like outpatient treatment, but like, you know, you had to go to drug court weekly for it. But it did involve counseling and then, you know, drug testing as a form of accountability. And then you had to go to, you know, a certain number of meetings per week. So that kept me pretty clean for the first, you know, 3 months.
Recovery is, I've watched it happen where first of all, you have to detox. You have to get everything out of your system. Drugs take a little bit longer than alcohol. And then you go into a recovery type facility treatment that could last 28 days. It could last a year. It could last 2 years. But there's no guarantee by doing all these things that you're going to stay clean and sober. So to me, one of the philosophies of AA, and I think in any program, is just one day at a time.
I started feeling like legitimate relief around when I started to do the 9th and the 10th steps. So the 9th step is when we make amends to people, and which is, you know, admitting when I'm wrong, that I was wrong, asking what I can do to make it right. And so I made some pretty big amends to my family, to some former employers. My brother-in-law was a pretty big one. And then during the 10th step, I started doing a formal nightly inventory, and I started to raise my hand in meetings to offer to sponsor men. And when I started working with another alcoholic, like I started to feel like legitimate relief.
So I knew about AA, I knew about recovery. I walked in on a Sunday, and 20 years later, I'm still sober. I thought about going to treatment, but I was scared of being incarcerated. I wish that I'd gone to treatment because to sober up by yourself was very painful. And I'm just blessed that this worked for me.
I've lost several friends over the years, a relative, and someone explained it to me like this, that, you know, don't regret the time you have. Like, you've been blessed with a second chance, and you know a lot of people who haven't. And so I took that to heart, and I heard that about a year ago, and like haven't regretted a day in my life since. And I've like really woken up with like intention and purpose to do things that I never thought I could do.
It's come real full circle because, you know, when I was 21, the biggest fear that I had was like that AA or recovery would really bind me. Like, it would restrict me from going out, making friends, meeting girls, just ridiculous things like that. And like today, I can't even describe like the level of freedom that I have. Like, my life is consumed by my recovery, which was my biggest fear. But I mean, I'm not bound down by anything. Like, there's a freedom from myself that is just like liberating.
No matter what I did, alcohol was always front and center. I would be crazy to take a drink. Now, there are times I've been at a party and I thought that was my glass and I picked it up and it was straight vodka. Well, I didn't go drink the next day. But I'm aware that the mentality of me thinking that I can successfully drink or do drugs every day, I'm long past that.
I could not live without drugs and alcohol. Like, I was physically bound to it. Just, you know, could not function without drugs and alcohol for my entire adult life. Tomorrow I'll have 1 year. Like, that's, I never in my life thought that would be possible. Like, it's just, it's gonna be rough, absolutely, the whole recovery process. Like, it's gonna hurt, but it's definitely worth it.
October 25th, 2017, when I hiked 2,189 miles. And yeah, I did it all by myself. And there were a lot of people who said I couldn't do it. And you know, it was for the first time in my life, like, that I thought, like, you know, reinforcing that, like, delayed gratification of, you know, maybe I can do it. You know, I think that's what hits every addict's head when they hit 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Like, how long can I take this? And yeah, I think that trip, if I hadn't found recovery, I wouldn't have been able to do that trip. But it was just that reinforcement of I can do anything if I'm in recovery that bled into that I can really do anything.
You're witnessing somebody today who's living beyond their wildest dreams. And I know that's pretty ridiculous. Like, I mean, I'm financing an 06 Toyota Corolla. Like, I'm not living the good life. I live in Bessemer, Alabama. But like, the freedom that I have today is just amazing.
I can do anything for 1 day. So if you ask me today, Chip, will you be clean the rest of your life? I'm going to tell you today.
I mean, now, like, for the first time in my life, I'm looking forward to my future. Like, there's just a freedom, like, I can't even describe it, man.
I know as like a single unit that I'm really not that important, and it doesn't really matter in the long run that much, my little impact on this world. But at the same time, like, how small and precious my little life is and how beautiful it can be.
When we first started making this movie, we thought that drug addicts were just kind of sketchy people in an alleyway.
But as we got to understand their lives and hear their stories, we found out that they were so much more than that. They're people just like us who have gone through different challenges in their life. And hearing how they recovered was an amazing experience.